Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Sejal Gamit. I am going to discuss about rheumatic fever. Okay. So, here are the learning objectives. At the end of the lecture, you are able to define rheumatic fever as well as able to describe etiopathogenesis, morphological changes, and clinical feature of the rheumatic fever. So, what is rheumatic fever? Remember the definition. Rheumatic fever is an acute, immunologically mediated, multi-system inflammatory disease that occurs a few weeks after an episode of infection with bacteria, that is group A, beta hemolytic streptococci, causes streptococcal pharyngitis. Here, streptococci causes throat infection that involve both tonsil and pharynx. So, tonsillectomy alone will not prevent or will not immune the patient against rheumatic fever. It is a multi-system disease affecting heart, joint, brain, cutaneous and subcutaneous tissue. It is a major public health problem in heavily populated, underdeveloped as well as developing countries. However, it is a preventable disease. So, what is the pathogenesis of rheumatic fever? There is no direct invasion to the tissue by microorganism, but it is the formation of autoantibodies against the bacteria. So, first of all, there is group A streptococcal pharyngeal infection. So, body produces antibody against streptococci. Now, this antibody cross-react with the human tissue because of antigenic similarity between the streptococcal component and human connective tissue. That is also termed as molecular mimicry. There is a certain amino acid sequence that is similar between the streptococci and the human connective tissue. Now, this antibody binding will activate complement. Okay, and it also recruit Fc receptor bearing cells like neutrophil and macrophages, as well as there is production of certain cytokines by the CD4 plus T cells. That will also cause activation of macrophages. So, by combination of this antibody and T-mediated reaction, it causes immunologically mediated inflammation and damage to the human tissue which have similar antigenic characteristics. This image shows the streptococci structure. It is a gram-positive cocci. This is the structure of the streptococci. A is the capsule, B fimbria, C MTR antigenic protein, D group specific carbohydrate, E peptidoglycans, F cytoplasmic membrane, and G cytoplasm. Now, due to the antigenic similarity of this structure with human connective tissue, the antibody produces against this structure will now cross-react with the human connective tissue and give rise to signs and symptoms. So, this is the pathogenesis. First of all, there is a throat infection by the streptococci. So, our body will produce antibody against streptococci. Now, due to the antigenic similarity, this antibody cross-react with the human connective tissue. In the figure, it reacts with the heart and causes vegetation as well as fibrinous pericarditis. Okay. So, rheumatic fever pathogenesis. Now, we have already seen this. Antibodies are produced against streptococci that cross-react with the human connective tissue. So, which are the human connective tissue which have similar antigenic characteristic as streptococci? In this figure, due to the antigenic similarity of hyaluronic acid in this capsule of streptococci and the human connective tissue of joint, the antibody that will produce against hyaluronic acid will now attack joint and causes arthritis. Similarly, due to the similarity between the M protein in the cell wall and in the myocardium, the antibody produces against M protein will now react with myocardium and causes pancarditis. Similarly, due to the antigenic similarity between the N-acetyl glucosamine remnants, the antibody produces against this component now cross-react with the valve of the heart and give rise to valvulitis. And similarly, the antibody that produces against the protoplasmic membrane will now attack with the cardiac as well as smooth muscle and the neuron of the caudate nuclei and give rise to chorea. So these are the major manifestation of the rheumatic fever. You can easily see exudate on the surface of the tongue, and the major manifestations that include arthritis, pancarditis, erythema marginatum, subcutaneous nodules, and chorea. So, in order to rheumatic fever to occur, there must be throat infection by the group A beta hemolytic streptococci. Antibody must be produced by the body rapidly and in high titer. This antibody now cross-react with the human connective tissue. So, what is the epidemiology of rheumatic fever? Okay, it is most common in close community as well as few cases are sporadic. It is most common in children between the age group of 5 to 15 and progression of which give rise to rheumatic heart disease. It is also common in poor socio-economic condition and in overcrowding. So, there is one question, why not all the patients that have group A streptococcal throat infection will have rheumatic fever? Because there are two features, that is microorganism variables and host variables. So, what is microorganism variables? Only certain strains that can produce is the immunologically active antigen, and the host variable, some of us will produce is large amount of antibodies after each infection, but other do not. This is the cause, that is why not all the individual having throat infection will not develop or will not have rheumatic fever. So, what are the diagnostic criteria for rheumatic fever? Okay, that is also termed as Jones criteria. There is evidence of the preceding streptococcal infection plus 2 major or 1 major and 2 minor criteria. Okay, so which are the major criteria? That involves carditis, migratory polyarthritis, chorea, subcutaneous nodules, and erythema marginatum of the skin. Here are the minor criteria that includes arthralgia, fever, raised ESR, CRP, and prolonged PR interval. Some of the other supporting evidence of the streptococcal infection are positive throat culture, rapid streptococcal antigen test, and elevated streptococcal antibody titer, that is anti-streptolysin O, S, DNase, and hyaluronidase. When this antibody titer are more than 300 in children and more than 200 in adult, it suggests previous infection. Okay. Now we will see the pathological changes in the organ involved by rheumatic fever. First of all is the heart. Okay. In the heart, it will causes carditis. Okay. All the 3 layers are involved, that is also termed as rheumatic heart disease. The pathognomic feature of the pancarditis in the rheumatic fever is the presence of Aschhoff body. Now, what is this Aschhoff body? Are spheroidal tiny structure 1 to 2 mm in size, can be seen microscopically as well as grossly. There are 3 stages for for development of this Ascough body. Okay, the three stages are early, intermediate and late. So what is the early stage for the formation of Ascough body? Earliest sign of injury in the heart is apparent by 4th week, and on the microscopically you can see there is edema of the connective tissue and increase in acid mucopolysaccharide in the ground substance. Okay, so there is separation of this collagen fiber by accumulating ground substance. Eventually, the collagen fibers are fragmented, disintegrated, and this affected area take the appearance and staining characteristic of fibrin. So, these changes are referred as fibrinoid degeneration. Intermediate stage occurs 4th to 13th week of illness. This stage of Ascough body is pathognomic of rheumatic condition. Here on the microscopically, the fibrinoid change is followed by proliferation of lymphocytes, plasma cells, neutrophil, cardiac histiocytes, also called aniscocells. Some of these modified cardiac histiocytes become multinucleated. They are called Ascough cells, pathognomic of the rheumatic heart disease. And the late stage that occur 12 to 16 weeks after an illness. Eventually, the Ascough body is replaced by fibrocollagenous scar. So, here is the microscopic view of Ascough body, in which you can see fibrinoid necrosis as well as aniscocells that are cardiac histiocytes and multinucleated cardiac histiocytes that are Ascough cell. Here, one finding in aniscocell, when you see in the longitudinal section, the nucleus of the aniscocell appear as a central condensed mass with ribbon-like wavy chromatin that is termed as caterpillar pattern. Okay, and when you see on the cross section, it will appear as a central condensed mass with perinuclear halo, gives the characteristic owl's eye appearance. Okay. Now we will see the changes in all the layer of the heart. First of all, rheumatic endocarditis, in which it involves valvular and mural endocardium and give rise to rheumatic valvulitis and mural endocarditis. So what are the changes in rheumatic valvulitis? There is thickening and loss of translucency of valve leaflet. There are small, multiple, votive vegetation along the line of closure, which are firm and sterile. So here most commonly infected valve is mitral valve, followed by aortic tricuspid and rarely pulmonary valve. Now what is mural endocarditis? Here there is a characteristic lesion that is called McCullum's patch. Now what is it? It is a thickened and roughened area of the endocardium in the posterior wall of left atrium. Rheumatic myocarditis. Myocardium, especially of left ventricle, is soft and flabby in the intermediate stage. It will show small foci of necrosis and Ascough body may be seen sometime. Rheumatic pericarditis is characterized by fibrinous pericarditis. So what is fibrinous pericarditis? Here you can easily see there is loss of shiny surface of the pericardium due to the deposition of fibrin and fibrinous exudate on the surface of pericardium. So, when you pull off parietal pericardium from visceral pericardium, the surface appears saggy due to the accumulation of fibrin between these two layers, give rise to characteristics bread and butter appearance of fibrinous pericarditis. Now, apart from cardiac lesion, other extracardiac lesion are arthritis. Okay, it is a migratory polyarthritis. Pain and swelling subside in one joint while the other joint tend to get involved. So it is a migratory polyarthritis. If you give aspirin and pain will disappear within 24 to 48 hours, it can be used as a diagnostic test for rheumatic fever. Now what is chorea? It is rapid, purposeless movement of the trunk and extremities. Subcutaneous nodule, they are painless, hard nodule beneath the skin over bony prominence like tendons and joints. Erythema marginatum are erythematous ring-shaped transient patches seen over trunk and limbs. So, in this figure, in the first figure, you can easily see small multiple vegetation on the valve of the leaflet. Okay, and there is also thickening and fusion of the chorda tendineae. In the figure B, you can see formation of Aschhoff body. In the figure C, you can see mitral valve. Okay, in this there is a thickening of the leaflet of mitral valve along with commissural fusion as well as calcification of this valve give rise to characteristic fish mouth or buttonhole stenosis of the mitral valve. In the figure D, you can see dilatation of the left atrium along with neovascularization. And in the figure E, it is a aortic valve which is infected, in which you can see there is a thickening of the leaflet with commissural fusion. Okay. This is the figure of subcutaneous nodules. Okay. These nodules are differ from rheumatoid arthritis, in which the nodules are larger as compared to subcutaneous nodules. Here is the image of erythema marginatum, in which you can see erythematous patches with central clearing. So, out of all these cardiac and extracardiac manifestation, involvement of the heart is the major cause of death in the patient. So it is also said that rheumatic fever leaks the joint but bites the heart. Thank you.